What's going down, D-Gens? It's been a minute for sure. Well, it feels like a minute. It's been like 3 months. Anyways, guys, today is the first day of Christmas, right? For the new year, for the new NFL season. First day to get us hyped. I'm sure that you have looked at or seen or heard or read or whatever, a million different articles out there on the schedule, how it's played out, who won, who lost, and all that other bullshit that doesn't really matter. If you have been into the gambling field for a while, you already know a couple of things I'm going to say. If you haven't been, great, strap in, get a notebook out, get a recorder out, or just, subscribe, whatever. Just be able to watch this over and over and over again. Help my views, get some fake accounts, do it again. Do whatever you got to do to help me out for free, okay? But aside from that, let's get into it. I'm going to go over like a little bit of an agenda, right? Let everybody know what's going on. Trying to be a little bit more organized this year. If you are listening to my terrible voice for the first time ever, we have had this YouTube channel running for, this will be the fourth year, I believe, straight. The first year was kind of hit or miss. Last year, unfortunately, like the second half of the season, had some technical difficulty, so I was kind of going in and out. I do like to post a video at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week during the NFL season, giving you guys free plays, free links, free just hookups with information, stuff I've heard, read, found, studied, whatever. Secondly, though, I do like to kind of do the mathematical portion of it. So I have my own models. I share them for free. There is some stuff that I kind of keep to myself only because it's, part of the game, right? But as far as the picks and things, I do like to give those out. I will be very upfront, very transparent. Like, last year, the second half of the season really went to shit. Some of that was just inconsistency on my part. Tried to kind of get it right, and there was a couple weeks that we did hit, but for the most part, I will tell you, it ended up being a losing year because of the last, I would say, like the second half of the season. The first half was great. First half was, I think we were at like 56% at one point. Winners. Preseason went amazing. Preseason, I believe, we ended up going like 6-1, if I remember correctly, and I have it in here somewhere. We can go research it, but it was either 6-1 or 7-2, 7-1, something like that. We had an amazing preseason. First like 2-3 weeks of the NFL season were pretty hot. Biggest loss we had, I remember to this damn day, was the Bills beating the dog shit out of the Rams on opening night. So, anyways, like I said, let's get back to the agenda. Whole point of that was for me to stay on topic. So, a couple things we're going to do. We're going to go over the teams that I'm focusing on this year. If you are new to the gambling stage, as far as the NFL is the hardest sport to handicap. You're probably not going to get it the first year. Probably not going to get it the first, second, third, fourth year. It's going to take a minute. That's why you want to listen to as many people as you can, as many different podcasts. People have been doing it maybe just a little bit longer than you, because we will try to kind of teach you some of those pitfalls and things before you get there. One of the biggest pitfalls is people try to handicap the entire NFL, and it is just not possible with one person. People who do that have teams and large, bank accounts and all that kind of stuff to pay people to research and study and stay by a computer all day and get every little highlight and topic and listen to coach speak. That's not what we're going to do, and that is not what I advise you do either. Focus on a handful of teams and kind of have a reasoning behind that, whether it's your home team, teams that you're very familiar with, teams that you can watch on TV the most without having to pay anything. It's just something that's logical. So I'm going to go over my focus teams. We're going to go over the schedule, of course. Easiest schedules for this year, the top 5 easiest schedules. I'll give you the 5 hardest as well, but I'm going to kind of focus on the easiest portion of it. The team that I think is set to get the biggest jump, forward jump that is, this year, and the reasoning behind that. There may be other teams later on, throughout the offseason that I believe are going to take a big jump, but for sure there is one that's glaring, just staring at me right in the face, and I have to get that off my chest. After that, we'll go into one-score game results from last year. So last year, I did keep track of all the games. Again, if this is your first time, I do keep track of every single game as far as how they land, right? Was it like a 5-point game? Was it a 7-point difference in the game? 8-point difference? Was it a blowout? And keep track of all that to, one, verify that the key numbers are still the key numbers. Two, to see if we can identify any trends as far as like when key numbers come into play, when teams are, more likely to score a lot, score a little, try to beat the hell out of somebody, or maybe take their foot off the gas. And then lastly, to just be able to come back essentially like a year later and say, hey, you know what, this one team had 13 wins, but 20 of our, 10 of them, 11 of them, 12 of them, whatever, ended up being won by less than a touchdown. And that's important, and we'll get into that in a second here. The last two things, though, I'm going to go over is correlations, which is something new because I have not done this before, at least not on the channel. So learn some new math skills, over the off season, putting that into play, and just kind of showing you exactly how and why I think these things are going to come into play, how they matter, and how and when they will come into play throughout the season. Lastly will be preseason plays. So yes, there are already some preseason plays out there that I have highlighted, I've circled. They're going to be kind of small nibbles for right now, right? Like I'm not want to tie up a whole bunch of money for the next 4 months or 3 months or whatever, but there are some plays out there. So we'll go over that. So let's get into it. It's a lot to go over. I'm going to try to keep this video as short as possible, but let's get into it. So focus teams, first of all, it's going to be the Buccaneers, Colts, Falcons, Giants, Jaguars, Panthers, Ravens, Saints, Texans, Titans, right? So that's a total of 11 teams, and really I wanted to keep it down to 8, but I added just a handful more, and I'll kind of show you why, and I may whittle this back down to 8 by the time actual season starts. But let's go over the reasoning real quick. Before I even get into that, let me give you the 5 schedules I was talking about. So the 5 easiest schedules for the year: Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Colts, Bears. First thing that you should notice is that a lot of these teams are in the same division. Saints, Falcons, Panthers are all in the same division. The only team that's not on the top 5 easiest schedules is the Buccaneers. Last year, this same exact thing happened with the NFC East. The Giants and Eagles had like the number 1 and 2 schedules, and the Cowboys, I believe, were number like 11 or 10. Like they were towards the top half of easiest schedules. And last year, all 3 of those teams made the playoffs. The reason we keep track of these easiest schedules is because it is very typical for at least 1, 2, or 3 of these teams to end up making the playoffs. Even though we may think on paper they suck, and we remember them as sucking really bad, and they're probably the suckiest sucks that ever sucked, it somehow happens that at least one, typically 2 or 3 of these teams end up making the playoffs, one way or the other. So that's why we want to take a look at these teams, not only to worry about playoffs, but secondly to kind of identify that trend ahead of time and hopefully beat the market curve, right? Because once the teams start looking really good really early, people are going to jump on that train, and it's going to jack up everybody's value, right? Because if the Saints come out and they're like 5-0, people start betting on them. They start skewing the numbers, and all the books get all messed up. So we want to identify the trends before they get to that point. Also, the hardest schedules: Dolphins, Raiders, Chiefs, Bills, Patriots. So obviously the opposite, right? Most of these teams are not going to make the playoffs. That being said, the Chiefs had the absolute hardest schedule last year in the entire NFL, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So, it's not unheard of. A lot of these teams have the hardest schedule because they had the best teams from last year. A team like the Patriots just kind of got the shit into the stick, right? But these teams are going to have a little bit of a tough road, or a very tough road, I should say, to get into the playoffs, and kind of stay healthy throughout all of that. And it's going to be a problem. So teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Bills, they've been towards this end of the hard schedule portion the last at least 2 to 3 years. So I don't expect them to have any additional issues, right? Like those teams are just that good where they're going to overcome this hurdle. But a team like the Raiders and the Patriots, probably not. That's probably a team you want to look to fade in one way or another, at least as the season gets going and we kind of get towards the latter half of the season. That's another thing to pay attention to. These teams that have hard schedules, it's not all at once, right? It's not like week one, like, oh man, this team's going to really suck ass. Sometimes it's just the course of the season grinding you down, right? Your players are getting hurt. Your players are getting tired. You don't have a lot of rest time in the NFL. There's only so many games. You can't take games off. And you guys know this if you're watching the NFL, right? But that's just the way it goes. And as you get to especially week 14 and on, you see a big difference in the teams that have had hard schedules. The teams that have had to fight and scrap to try to get to just an even record typically have a very hard time closing out the season because they're just so exhausted from the season coming into it. So those are the easiest schedules. The 5 easiest schedules are 5 teams that are on here, right? So we have the Saints, we have the Falcons. We do have the Falcons. Saints, Falcons. I included the Buccaneers on the teams that I want to watch just because they're in basically the easiest division, right? It's the Saints, Falcons, Buccaneers. The Colts, same thing. Colts have an easy schedule. They're the number 4 easiest schedule. There's another item here, and I'll kind of touch on it because a lot of these teams fall in that same boat. The 2 teams that I did not have as far as easiest schedules, but I personally just wanted to throw them in, were the Giants and the Jaguars. The Giants, if you've been watching this since last year, I'm a huge fan of Brian Daboll. I have been a Brian Daboll fan since he was with the Bills. I'm personally a Cowboys fan, right? Or I was at least before I got into fantasy and betting and all that kind of stuff. So Brian Daboll is that great, in my opinion. I am rooting for this guy, even though he is, a coach and a rival of mine. I just think he's one of the best coaches out there. He did amazing with the team last year, with basically no change, right, in personnel or very little from the year before. He made this team a playoff team. They did re-sign Daniel Jones, but it's whatever. Brian Daboll is going to get the most out of the guys that are working with him. Secondly, though, is the Jaguars. The Jaguars are, again, playing a very easy division, probably the second easiest division. They're playing in an easy division, and they're playing against an easy division. So that's an important distinction as well. When you're playing teams like the Texans, like the Colts, who are typically, they're not expected to be great teams. And then on the flip side of that, you're playing against the NFC South throughout the year, the teams that we just went over with the Falcons and the Saints and the Buccaneers, these teams that are just not set to look really great on paper. You have a relatively good path to the playoffs and probably a lot of good schedule spots that we can look to take advantage of. The last team that was not in either of these divisions, and I just could not stay off of them, is the Ravens. The Ravens are another team I've really liked the last 2 years. The reason that even started is because Lamar Jackson is perennially underrated. He just is. I'm not saying he's the best passer. I'm not saying he's, the best quarterback, period. But the guy gets the job done, and John Harbaugh knows how to use him. It'd be one thing if Lamar Jackson was playing for any other coach. I don't think he'd be worth shit. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons you did not see a lot of people jump at the chance to get him. Very few coaches, I think, have the ability to get the most out of Lamar Jackson, and it's probably John Harbaugh and maybe the San Francisco's 49ers coaching staff, possibly. Kyle Shanahan, he is obviously a great coach. He has a way with some, mobile quarterbacks. He likes guys like Trey Lance. I could see it working, but that's pretty much it. Other than that, all the other teams that are on here basically are in here because they're playing either with a very easy schedule or they're playing against the easy schedule or, within those divisions, kind of like a mixed match. So like I said, we may take some of these off. The Buccaneers, I'm going to go over this with you real quick. Some of these teams, like the Buccaneers, like the Colts, they both have new quarterbacks that are really not impressing me here. And I don't think you're going to see a whole lot from these guys. Baker Mayfield obviously is not a rookie. He's been around for a while, but he's just not a great quarterback. He's really struggles under pressure, and I don't think you're going to get a whole lot out of that Buccaneers offensive line. Secondly, Todd Bowles is a god-awful, terrible coach. Just terrible. I mean, he's one of the absolute worst by metrics, by my grading system, by everything you can imagine out there. He's just not a good coach. The reason he did anything in the NFL the past couple of years here with the Buccaneers, I should say, is because of Tom Brady. If it was any other quarterback, that team not only sucks, it's just not going anywhere. They're probably in like a 3-13, 3-14 kind of season. He's just not a good coach, and he only got over the hump with Tom Brady. And even Tom Brady, granted, a 40-year-old Tom Brady, couldn't really get this team going. He really did not. They limped into the playoffs, and they got their ass handed to him by the Cowboys. He's just not a good coach, and you're going to pair him up with a quarterback who's not going to elevate him the way that Tom Brady did. I don't see it. It's going to be an awful team, and I believe that they're very overrated right now. So that's one team that stands out to me. The Colts, new coach Shane Steichen. Gardner Minshew is on the roster. I don't know if he's going to start immediately or Anthony Richardson. I would assume Minshew is probably the one that's going to start, but a first-time head coach with what amounts to like a journeyman in Minshew. I think he's good, but he's obviously not like a world beater, right? That's why he hasn't stayed with the team. Or you're going to pair up a rookie head coach with a rookie quarterback, and that's never good. Actually, last year I did the research on that particular matchup, right, where a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback, you're averaging at most 19 points a game. And that's, maybe doesn't sound terrible, right? Like, it's not the damn Broncos who did like 14 or whatever last year, but you're not going to win a whole lot of games if that's like, you're the top of your production. Aside from that, we also had Panthers, who got obviously their rookie quarterback in Bryce Young, and he's going to match up with Frank Reich. Frank Reich, I think, is a good coach. I've said this for a couple of years as well. I think he's decent. I think he knows what the hell he's doing. I think with the Colts, they just did not give him a quarterback to work with. But two, he is a very X's and O's driven guy. From what I've been able to see and put together over the years of watching him, he knows what he wants to do. He knows how to draw it up. He knows how to play, like, even the efficiencies, right? He's not as great playing against a team without very strict set numbers in front of him. And I truly believe that's why he has gotten off to the very slow starts that he's gotten off to, right? He's, though, perennially been like a loser in the first week of the season. That was the big knock on the Colts. I think like 3, 4, 5 years in a row, they had not won a season opener. And a lot of that is because Reich just didn't ever have a good game plan coming in. He got better as the season went on, and that's true of a lot of analytical guys, right? Like, you get more data, you get more data points, you're going to have a better performance, and so that kind of hurt him. But secondly, as you all know, he never really had a set quarterback. Every year was another quarterback. Every year was another, like, a 50-year-old quarterback that was, like, struggling to stay in the league and was on their way out. So, it is what it is. Lastly, though, the Texans are another team, and this one obviously is not going to be a surprise to anybody, but just another team that has a rookie head coach with a rookie quarterback. And again, statistically, you're looking at 19 points a game, and the team last year obviously wasn't good. And even towards the end of the season, when things maybe were kind of sort of coming together, you still were really not getting more than 21, 24 points out of that team, and that was on a good day. And most of the time, you saw those points come when the opponent had already wrapped it up. They already knew that they were winning. It's the fourth quarter, whatever it was. I know one game in particular comes to mind where they were playing the Cowboys, and another one where they played the Rams. They were just getting their ass handed to them. Not against the Cowboys, against the Rams, and the Rams pulled their players the middle of the third quarter, and the Texans struggled, but they got back into the game and they made it look competitive if you're just looking at the score, but it really wasn't. So again, this year I see just another step back, at least for the first couple games, first half of the season. So that's a team I am definitely looking to fade. But anyway, so that wraps that up. So we've gone over the teams we're going to focus on, as well as the easiest schedules. Let's get into the biggest jump. And the biggest jump for me is going to be very, very much based off of schedules. Let me just pull this up. I have a little list. If I was prepared, that'd be great. The Bears. So Bears are my number one team for a big jump. So last year, they had a win rate, and I'm going to read directly from the screen. So if you don't want to look, don't look. Close your eyes. It's going to sound stupid if I'm reading while you're reading and we're just reading over each other like an idiot. So last year, they had a win rate of only 13% in one-score games. What the hell does that mean? I'll tell you. That means of all the games that they played that were decided by 8 points or less, they only won 13% of the time. The average is right around 50%, and I've been tracking that stat for about 5 years now, and every year it's anywhere from like 48 to like 52, 53% is the average. So for one team to be way, way under is a huge sign of positive regression coming. If you think about it logically, those one-score games, for the most part, just mean that the ball bounced your way, right? Like a fumble happened and your team was closest to it. A field goal happened and either you got the benefit of a lucky field goal or you got screwed over by a lucky field goal. A flag didn't go your way. Something like this happened. And so when a team is at they're 13%, that's huge. They should be in for positive regression just throughout the course of the year. Number 2, they now have the number 5 easiest schedule. So easy schedules always help. Like we were talking about earlier, typically those teams with the easiest schedule make it, or at least make it run to the playoffs. And if they get in, they kind of, it's just going to depend on who they play against, but they at least have that run in them or the possibility of that. I did look through their schedule, like their week by week schedule, and there's really not a lot of like hard, difficult spots. Sometimes, you may have easy teams that you're playing against, quote unquote easy, but they come in bad spots, right? Like you have to play a team after the bye week. You're playing a Thursday night game after you played like a Sunday night game. You're playing away on Thursday, whatever it is. You have weird schedules. The Bears don't suffer from that. The Bears actually got a very fair, like advantageous schedule for them. I don't see that getting in their way. On top of that, of course, you got to look at the actual players on the field. So obviously you got DJ Moore, who's coming in. Another year for Justin Fields. Justin Fields hopefully not just takes a step forward in his play, but hopefully gets better assistance from his coaching staff. And that's the negative I have listed here. It's the only way I really see this team not taking the jump that I believe they should. And that's because of Eberflus. Matt Eberflus has almost strictly a defensive background, even going back to college, right? Like he played as a linebacker, he was a linebackers coach, and then a linebackers coach again, and then he was a defensive coordinator, and then another linebackers coach, and that's pretty much all he's done in the NFL and in college. So for him to be a head coach now, obviously we didn't see anything that really impressed last year, and this year, who knows, right? But I don't think anything is going to change. I don't think this guy's going to magically be like an offensive coach in one off season. Usually, when you have somebody that's that defensive minded, you want to look at the offensive coordinator to be like, okay, well maybe he's got someone to kind of, even him out a little bit. In this case, he has Luke Getsy, same guy that was there last year. He didn't really impress me either, and his resume is pretty short. He was a quarterback's coach in college, kind of went back and forth with the college and NFL. And he actually came in and he was the quarterback's coach and like an offensive quality control, whatever, for the Packers under Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, which obviously Aaron Rodgers is going to make you look, decent. But Mike McCarthy has not really done a lot. And, if you tell me that, yeah, he made the playoffs with the Cowboys, fuck you. I don't care. The dude sucks. He's terrible. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He can screw off. He can just screw right the hell off. I don't care. That guy is terrible. I will not be convinced that he's a good coach. Unless he wins the Super Bowl, I don't believe it. and I'm talking about a Super Bowl with the Cowboys. I know he won the Super Bowl with the Packers. I don't give him like nearly any credit for that. To me, that's mainly Aaron Rodgers winning in spite of Mike McCarthy. The guy's had a terrible rap, a terrible background, all that other crap. Anyways, this video is not about him and my hate for Mike McCarthy. Luke Getsy, though, is just, he worked with Mike McCarthy, worked with Rodgers, and he left. He went back to college, and then he came back to the Packers again with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers. So, aside from last year, Luke Getsy had really only ever worked with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers organization. So, to go from Aaron Rodgers to Justin Fields, and it's not to say that Justin Fields is not good and talented. I like him. I actually think he's a really good quarterback. It's just it's a different style of play, right? Obviously. So that is the negative, and that's the one thing I think could hold this Bears team back. Other than that, I think that they're solid. You know, they have DJ Moore, who maybe is not the best wide receiver, but the dude's tough. The dude's really good. He's a great receiver, great hands receiver, runs great routes, knows what he's doing. He knows where he's at on the field. He breaks people off. He can go deep. He can go short. He can do whatever you want him to do. If Justin Fields can run around and get him some time, the guy's going to get open. On top of that, you have a decent enough running game. Your offensive line definitely needed some help, but they addressed that in the draft. So, they did spend their first round pick on an offensive lineman. So I think that's going to get shored up as well. The defense is better. That's hopefully, right, the positive of having a defensive-minded coach is that your defense is at least, like, okay. Like, you have a baseline there. So, not saying that these guys can go to the Super Bowl, but hopefully we see the Bears kind of show us something early, and we can jump on that train before everybody else does. So that's the team that I'm thinking is going to take the biggest jump. One-score game results, going back to this 13% here, and like I said, one of the biggest reasons I'm taking the Bears for this jump is that 13% win rate. This is the result from last year. I can go through this. If you want any of this information, guys, it's free. It's on YouTube for a reason. Like, it's free. I'm not charging for it. Hit me up either in the comments below. Find me on Twitter. It's at AG_sports21. I'm sorry, AG_sports21. Either way, just reach out to me, DM me, whatever. Give me your email address, or tell me where I can find you on Instagram or whatever, and I'll send you the information. It's up there. It's for free. Really, what I'm looking for is anybody who's willing to help in building these pieces of information and tracking them, because like I said, I'm one guy. I can only do so many teams at a time. And so if I have another set of eyes, especially someone from another portion of the country, right, a region that I'm not in, and you are more familiar with certain teams than maybe I am, and you have more access to like your local newspaper and your local film and all that kind of stuff, local coach speak, you may be able to give me some tips that I can't give you, and vice versa. So if anybody's interested in that, reach out. If you just want the information, that's fine too, reach out. But here's all the different one-score games, or the teams' performances in one-score games. So a couple teams that we see highlighted in red, right? So the Cardinals, the win percentage, that is. Cardinals, Bears, Browns, those really stand out to me. And I believe that's pretty much it. Yeah, those are the ones that stand out to me. And I'll give you a quick reason why. Like I said, there is an average. This average of 51%. If you're looking at where my mouse is at here, that's the average for last year. So average team had 51% a win rate when they were playing these one-score games. Like I said, very close to even, and it kind of tends to do that. Standard deviation is 18.56, meaning that most teams were going to be within about 18 to 19% of that 51%. So what does that mean, right? Let's do the simple math here. Towards the tippy top of this range here, you should be at about 69%. So about 69% of the games that you have that are decided by a touchdown or less, if you win those, you're doing pretty well. That's about the top end of the range. And the bottom portion of this range at 32%, again, you have all these one score games, you win only 32% of them. Yeah, you didn't do good. You did less than average, but you weren't like so far down that it was unbelievable. It's pretty much within one standard deviation. That's what it's called. There's more math behind that, but we'll just leave it at that. I'm sure you guys don't want the algebra lesson. So what I did, instead of just going off 50%, we're going to go off those outliers, right? Who was above 69% win rate and who was below 32% win rate. So the teams that were below, like I said, we just listed them. The Cardinals, the Bears, the Browns. The Broncos were also below 32%, just slightly, but they were below. The Raiders, same thing. They were at 31%. The Raiders and the Broncos, yeah, they probably will and should take at least a jump up in the one score win like area, but not putting a whole lot of weight in that one. The Browns and the Cardinals are two that I'm more interested in. The Browns having such a poor record at 25%, 2-6, especially with a team that on paper looks like they should be able to get the job done and kind of has its own style. It has a decent defense, has decent players, has a coach that I truly believe is at least an average, if not above average coach. I think a lot of this is just kind of the way that the ball fell, right? I would track that more to just chance on the Browns. The Cardinals, probably some of the same, but the fact that you're going to lose Kyler Murray, you have an older DeAndre Hopkins, you have an entirely new coaching staff, new head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator for the Cardinals. I'm not really too interested in doing anything with that team other than fading them. So the two teams we have left that are really interesting here are the Bears and the Browns. And both teams I'm very interested in. The Browns, I think, obviously they have a little bit of a harder schedule. They're not a top 5 easiest schedule. The Bears are, and they're due for some positive regression. Now, going one step further, right, I did want to look at this. So what is the correlation between one-score games and the amount of wins that you get? And what the hell does that mean? And why am I talking so much math, right? Just like, calm down. It's not even preseason yet. I'm not ready for all these numbers. Get ready. Get the energy drinks out. Get the coffee out. Pour sugar directly in your face. Whatever you got to do. The one-score game correlation, I think, is very interesting. If nothing else, at least from the math perspective of it, right? And it makes sense, and that's really why I did the test to begin with. You see a lot of these teams that win one-score games, and they win a lot of them, or they have a lot of them, right? Like on average, you should have about 7 to 8 to 9 maybe, because there's 17 games now, one-score games. But there's some teams that have like 12, 13, 14 one-score games. And I was just wondering, is that good or is that bad? Because if you're a team that can consistently win a lot of one-score games, right? Like let's take, for example, the Vikings, who did the exact opposite of what the Bears did. They went 11-0 in one-score games last year. 11-0. Now, you're 11 games, though, of having to scrape out a win, or at least hold on to a win, right? So you had 6 games where there was, whether you win or lost, wasn't a huge deal as far as like the final moments of the game. 11 of them were like down to the last minute because they were within one score. That's a lot. Like I said, you should really be at around the 8 game mark, maybe 9. 11's a lot, and the fact that you won all 11 of them is even more astounding. So the Vikings are the exact opposite. We would expect this team to not win as many one-score games, and if it regresses towards the mean, right, which would be about 50%, they should really be more around like 6 wins, and they won a total of 13 games. So if you have the 2 that they won outright by more than a touchdown, combined with the 6 that they should more or less win, with the kind of variance here, you're looking at more of like an 8 to 9 win team than a 13 win team. So you're going to hear a lot of people say that the Vikings are going to regress this year. That's what they mean. This is exactly what I'm showing you here. But the other part of that, and like what I was starting off with here, was, is it good or bad to have so many one-score games? The correlation is actually negative 18%. So if you're not familiar with how correlation works, it goes from 0 to +1 and 0 to -1. 0 to +1, the positive portion means not only is it a perfect correlation at 1, but it's a positive correlation. If you go down to -1, it's a negative correlation exactly. And if you go all the way down to 1, that means it's perfectly negative, right? So if you go up 1 on this side, you're going to go 1 down on the other side. Typically, we don't get a 1-to-1 correlation with sports, especially with football. So 18% it's not like 90 or 80%, obviously, but it's pretty high. It's high enough for me to take a look at. If you see a team that has 11, 12, 13 one-score games, what this correlation is saying to us is that team is not these great all world beaters. They are getting a lot of variance in their direction for one particular year if they're winning a lot, right? If they're winning 11 of them. Even if they're not winning, though, even if they are staying closer to the 50 mark, if you go and have a 17-game season and 12 of your games are decided by one score, you're just not a very good team. There's too much variance there. Your correlation says that you should be losing more of these games than you probably end up, actually losing in real life. And usually what happens is that kind of bites you in the ass the next year, because now you typically get a harder schedule because you finished higher up because you just got kind of lucky in some instances. And then 2, you don't get as good of a draft pick. And 3, you have higher expectations put on you. So a lot of these things all kind of go into play for the following year, and that's when we usually see these correlations and things like that really take place. So I wanted to bring that up mainly because some of these teams that you're going to hear about, about them regressing or doing whatever, be aware that that's what this means. And throughout the season, just remember that if you see a team that is winning and they look great on paper, look at how many times they had to really scrape out the win. It could give you a clue as to them not being, the quote-unquote, like the real contenders you're thinking they are. Staying on the topic of correlations, right? Let's get into it just a little bit more before I end the math lesson here. So if we know that one score game correlation is 18%, this bottom part here is called R squared. It's like the percentage of wins that are caused by that one particular stat. It's only 3% of wins are going to really be related to the one score win thing. What has a higher correlation, right? So strength of schedule has a negative correlation, right? So obviously the harder your schedule is, the less you should win. So it's about a 45% negative correlation. So going back to what I was starting this whole video with, if you have a hard schedule, we don't really expect you to win as much, and vice versa. And 20% of the wins that you get should be more or less, the variance in those wins should come from your strength of schedule. So that would explain why these easier scheduled teams end up doing better and having at least a shot to get into the playoffs as we get towards the closing part of the season. Quarterback rating, that's a huge one, and this is something that I mentioned last year, but I've never truly shown. Quarterback rating has about a 70% correlation. So the quarterback rating, if you have, a higher QBR score, mathematically, that should count for about almost 48%. I'm going to round up to say 50% of your win variance, right? So every time that you are playing, Team A is playing Team B, every time that Team A has a higher QBR, they should win, obviously a little bit more than 50%. So that's what that stands for. But the 70% direct correlation means that you should really have a higher QBR to win these games, and more often than not, about 70% of the time, right? So that's an important factor and something to look at. The problem with that one, and the reason I didn't really want to lead with that, is that QBR is not necessarily like a leading indicator. As we get towards the middle to the end of the year, it can be, because then we have enough data points and we know kind of, hey, this quarterback is good or bad, or this fit is good or bad, or whatever. But after 1, 2, 3, 4 games, it's still kind of up in the air, right? Because if you just had an easy schedule, if injuries broke your way, if whatever, you may have a quarterback that looks really good that's just hasn't really been tested yet, or vice versa. So the one that I chose to go with, and it is actually, again, mathematically more correlated to actual number of wins, is your margin of victory. So one thing that we see a lot from these teams that are consistently winning is that they have a high margin of victory. So a team last year, like the Jaguars, had 54 points as far as their margin of victory. So, you add up all their points from the games that they won, you add up all the points of the opponents, when the games that they lost, you subtract them, and that's your margin of victory. So 54 points, pretty good for the Jaguars, pretty good for the Ravens as well. Both of these teams ended up with winning records. Both of these teams ended up making the playoffs. It's a huge indicator. It's 72% correlated as far as with your wins, and it does more or less make up about 51% of the variance within those wins. So, huge indicator there with margin of victory. Now, unfortunately, this is also, I guess, what we would consider sort of a lagging indicator. The reason I believe it's a little bit more important or a little bit easier to track than the QBR is because we can tell very early in the season with this margin of victory. It does not take until the 8th, 9th, 10th week to be like, oh man, these teams are really blowing out the shitty opponents that they have. Really, really good teams are going to beat the shit out of bad teams, right? So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 1, the opener, right? Lions, Chiefs. You should see the Chiefs come out and just destroy the Lions. Now, that's, again, assuming that they are still as good as we're thinking they are. If we don't see that, that may be at least a little bit of a cause for alarm, unless there's something we can kind of reason with, right? Sometimes an injury that happens, something unforeseen happens, Mahomes throws like a late-minute interception, whatever, something that we can kind of at least talk to it. The Ravens, same way. Typically they come out week 1, they beat the hell out of whoever's in front of them. This year, week 1, they're playing the Texans. It's a 9.5-point favorite for the Ravens, and they're playing them in Baltimore. So again, we would expect the Ravens to come out and just beat the dog shit out of the Texans. And if they don't, that's when there's maybe a little bit of a cause for concern. Even if they win the game, but they're only winning by 3, 4, 5 points, what happened? Why did they not cover? Why did they not have a bigger margin of victory? So that is a huge correlation point that I don't really hear a lot of people talk about. I've heard the whole good teams should beat the hell out of bad teams, talking point, but I've never seen it actually listed out mathematically, and I just kind of wanted to share that with y'all because it's something that is going to be a bigger factor sooner than later. Like I said, I would say even week 2, 3, 4 of the NFL season. Lastly here, let's go ahead and get into the preseason plays. This may be why you came here. Only have a few for right now. There probably are going to be some more added on. One thing that I'm going to try and be a little bit more strict with myself on just throughout the season is the amount of plays. I know last year we had some weeks where it was 4, 5, 6 plays. I liked them. I liked them all. I bet them all. Win, lose, push, whatever. This year, and I think just in general, I really want to minimize my amount of plays. I said this last year, and unfortunately I didn't really adhere to it as much as I should have. So keep me honest out there as well. But it's much easier to win one game and be done for the week, right? Be up 1 unit than it is to wager on 5 games and hope you go 3-2 to win that same 1 unit. Anyways, with the preseason week, we have Jets versus Browns, and this is the Hall of Fame game. The Jets, Robert Saleh, 5-0 in his preseason. Last year, obviously, our first year he had a preseason. He's perfect in it. Browns, not terrible in the preseason. Kevin Stefanski, I believe, is a 56% win rate, which is not super far off of their relative, rate of wins. So, not a huge play for me, but it is the Hall of Fame game, first game of the season. I know I'm going to want to have something on it, and this is more just hey, let's put $10 on it just to say we did something with it. But I do believe the Jets are going to try to pull that one out. I think between the two of them, you're probably going to see the Jets with a little bit more want to win in that one. Also, the Browns are pretty established, right? Like, they don't have a lot of stuff they're still trying out. A lot of players are, putting out there. They got Nick Chubb. They know they got Deshaun Watson. Got Amari Cooper. They have, Njoku. They have who they have. There's no new coaches there. There's not really a whole lot else that they got moving around. You're not going to see Aaron Rodgers in this game either, so it's not like the Jets are going to be doing a whole lot of stuff either. But, some of their backups, they've had a lot of movement in the receiver room. You have some injuries still kind of in the running back room. You have a lot of moving pieces. It's a much younger team. I do expect the Jets to try more things out, to try and kind of get that win. Plus, we have Robert Saleh, who seems very committed to try to getting the preseason wins. Eagles-Ravens is my second game here, and this is preseason week 2. Eagles coach, this one's going to be the easiest, simplest thing here, and this is actually like my biggest lock for the preseason. Again, no locks, actually. I'm not Home Depot, but my biggest play for the preseason is going to be the Ravens to beat the Eagles in the preseason. There's no line on this one yet, so I'm just giving it to you now, and that way you can get ready for when the lines do come out. Nick Sirianni has a 20% win rate in the preseason. I believe he's something like 1-4. He's proven that he just could not care less about the preseason. There's really no reason for him to, right? Like, they just went to the Super Bowl. He's got a stud, solid quarterback. He's got his receivers. He's got a solid running back room now. DeAndre Swift is there. So, yeah, they got like a new player, but it's not a new system. They have a whole stable of running backs. There's really everything there in place. They don't need to come out and try to reinvent the wheel. They're really just trying to keep everybody healthy. And the fact that they have a coach that isn't going to really give it his all to try to win. You have a team who doesn't have a lot of like moving, changing pieces. Leads me to say they're not going to really come out here and try to get this win. Whereas the Ravens with John Harbaugh, he's got a 78% win rate. He definitely loves to try to get his team going in the preseason, even at the extent of, getting players hurt. And it's happened before. 2 years ago is when J.K. Dobbins got hurt, when Gus Edwards got hurt, and they still kept trying it. Last year they came back and went right back to it. So not scared of that factor at all. Ravens to win this game, preseason week 2, my biggest play of the preseason. I'm probably going to put down whatever the max is for that, so just know ahead of time. But I will tell you, the max is usually pretty low. It's like 250, 500, something like that, depending on your book. On that note, I am I am affiliated with Bovada at this point. So I would appreciate it, guys, if you are looking for a book, if you're looking for somewhere to play these games and put in these plays that I'm looking at, even if you're going to put in $5, $10, look at Bovada. They are going to have a lot of different promotions coming out as we get closer to the NFL season. Right now, I know they have 100% back bonus. I think it's like a 15 or 20 times rollover. That part does change a little bit, but as it gets closer to the NFL season, they're going to put more and more out there to try and get your business in. So if you would do me the favor of just using the affiliate link below, give me a like, give me a subscribe while you're down there. I would appreciate it. Help the channel grow, help me get more information, help me get more details, more computers, more software, more everything, right? That's all I ask for. Like I said, all the information, everything I can do here is all going to be free for you, whether you do it or not. But I just wanted to kind of throw that disclaimer out there, especially since it's so early and most people don't have a book yet. Bovada typically is the best public book as far as like giving you the best bonuses, best customer service, best at getting your money in and out, not a lot of wait times and all that kind of stuff. There's some other books that are, quote unquote sharper, but I will tell you, some of those books are a little bit more difficult to work with. It's a little bit harder to get your money out. Their systems are a little bit outdated. It doesn't look as clean. And if you're doing something, especially if you're just like a Sunday bettor, if you're just like, hey, I want to watch YouTube, I want to put $20 on a game and just kind of have some rooting interest in it, I wouldn't steer you anywhere else but Bovada. It's probably the easiest one to use, the most user-friendly, and the easiest to just get your money out. If you have any problems, they have a great customer service team that will call you, chat with you, whatever you got to do. Just like I said, I have no complaints. Lastly, though, as far as the plays, we'll get back to that. It's going to be preseason week 4. Broncos and Rams. this is kind of a funny one because we don't see this a lot as far as like the under-over in preseason. But I'm going to be taking the under on this one, and I'll tell you why. Sean McVay has only won one game in his entire professional career as a head coach. Sean Payton has won 2 games as a head coach. Together, they're a combined 3-20, and or a 15% win rate between the two of them. And both of them play extremely conservatively the last week of the preseason, and they both have done this for years and years and years, and I don't see any reason why they would change at this point. These two guys have actually played each other in the last week of a preseason game before, back when when Peyton was with the Saints. The Saints actually did end up winning that game, but it was a very low-scoring game, and I expect it to be the same here. And I apologize, I didn't write the score down. I should have, but I didn't because I'm dumb and it's the first video for the season. But point is here, both these guys are going to come out. They're going to just try to get through the game, try to not get anybody hurt. They're not going to do anything crazy. They're both going to be like waving the white flag as soon as they get there. It's just strictly a matter of like, let's do this because we have to and get the hell out of here. I'm taking the under in this game. The under on preseason games is usually like in the 30s. I would say like 36, 38, somewhere in there. This game, I could completely see it coming out like a 33, 33 and a half. I'm still taking the under. I truly believe this game could be like a 17-7 kind of game. So those are the preseason plays. Like I said, there may be some more that get added along the way, especially as we get closer. But those are the 3 right now that are just shouting at me that I'm going to have money down as soon as I can when the lines come out. Next time, a couple of things that we're going to be talking about, as they say in the business, right? So the next time we're going to be looking at some schedule spots. So I have broken down the schedule for most of the year, and the big stuff that's standing out to me, I'm going to be talking about that with you, and kind of the expected value, like the EV, right, of those plays, as well as when they happen, where they happen, what teams they happen with, who has the advantage here. Also, we're going to give you the week 1 plays, so there is already at least 2 plays out for week 1 that I like, and I will give you that here next time on the video. Updated coaching report card. So if you don't already know this, I do have a algorithm that creates a report card for coaches, and basically that just tells you how good one individual coach is over the other, and gives you just strictly like their coaching, stats. That is important because you don't really see coaches be quantified anywhere else. And then lastly, I will show you how to set up the handicapping spreadsheet for the year as we get going. So thanks again. Please check out the affiliate link, like, subscribe, everything below, comment, and I'll catch up with you guys soon.